I got a commission. You can buy a bug to the links in the description. Wow, guys, maybe I should go on American Idol for real, I don't know. Before I start, I just want to say that I did not mean to buy 2 packs of translucent clay when I only used Sculpey Premo. Anyways, enough preamble. You heard me correctly. I am working on a commission from the Caterpillar Lab up in New Hampshire. I'm very happy and grateful to have received an order of 3 different caterpillars from them. Jack, who I made the Denki Mushi for, was involved in the ordering process, so you already know that he's going to have me make caterpillars with a lot of spikes and spines. Like this one, which is so spiny that I had to sketch it out to have a proper count. After using a log of clay to make sure it's evenly spaced, I get to work properly segmenting the squishy body of the first spiky cat, the Stinging Rose Caterpillar. Then I bake that piece right away. I've learned a lot since I made the original Denki Mushi, and one thing is that my life is way easier if I make sure to bake with every step I take, bars, so that I don't have to worry about deforming those super neat caterpillar segments or accidentally nudging the surrounding wire spikes every time I add in a new spine. I had the bright idea to make all the spikes from clay for some reason, so I started to do that, and then I remembered that I have common sense. So I quickly switched to cutting up wire to use for that instead. Like, can you imagine? This video would be about 5 hours long. Another time and sanity saver is baking the spines separately. So I rolled the clay onto the wires, being sure to make them very Bella Hadid, and since I already opened one of the translucent clay packets, I figured I'd use it to hold onto the spines while I added the wire spikes, which I added one by one with my tweezer. I was going to bake the smaller spines on that second transparent clay log, but they're so bite-sized that I attached them directly to the base after drilling holes for them and their wires. I thought those were actually too big, to be honest. I had to go from AA cups to single A cups with these, and oh, it's so cute, so small. To attach these to the base, I crudely mold the spine to the base with my spatula-looking tool, and then I use one of my silicone tip tools to make it pretty. I made a separate pot of wire cuttings that are way shorter since they'll be attached to those bite-sized spines. Of course, I attach all of those one by ones with my tweezers too. My drill is slowly becoming my prized possession low-key. Like, she really just brings so much warmth and love and light into my life. Anyways, these are done and waiting to be attached. I pull out the wire, add a ball of clay, and reattach it. And as you can see, I did that 10 times. Then using the same method for the bite-sized 5'7" height spines, I used my spatula tool and then my silicone tool to attach the 6'3" height spines. And then, to really sell it, I added back a few wire spikes to blend it all together. The Singing Rose has a truly ridiculous amount of spines of various sizes, so all in all, it added up to 10 tall ones, 4 medium ones, and a whopping 24 mini ones, with each having about 10,000 wire spikes. I started with the Singing Rose because I knew all those spines and spikes would make this one of the most time intensive, and wow, I have never been more correct about anything in my life because between making the spines and adding all the spikes, it took me 9 hours. And now I gotta do it all again, because next up is the great sweater wearing caterpillar, aka the very popular Saddleback caterpillar. Yes. I have seen many an artist make these, and I'm happy the Caterpillar Lab has made it my turn. One of the main differences in form between these two is that this one has a funny little mustache that I have to make. So I drilled more holes, then decided the holes needed to be further down, so I plugged the original holes with a tiny snake of clay, proving once again that my drill tool is the air that I breathe and the wind beneath my wings. Once that was done, I quickly threw on these last teeny tiny spines and got ready to make this guy go through puberty. A part of me wanted to add the spikes and bake those 2 spines before the mustache grew in, but I was afraid of the spikes taking up too much room, so I thugged it out and made them all at once, which ended up being the right choice. I added 1,000,000 spikes to the spines, then I added another few thousand to the underside of the mustache, being careful to angle them so that they aren't too far downward, so that it doesn't impact the wires when you put this guy down on a table or anything. Then, I baked it, and those 2 for the books. Last but not least, I present to you the Skiff slug caterpillar, which might be my favorite caterpillar that I've ever made because it's so deceptively simple, yet so unique. Truly an icon. Call Tyra because she's on top. Yes, right. So I tinfoil base her, like I did with the other 2. Covered that with an extra thick layer of clay because I was nervous, but I can't remember why. Cut away the excess and smoothed the seams. One of the interesting things about the form of this one is that it's one of those shapes that changes based on the angle, like an optical illusion because it's regular oblong shape from the top view, triangular from the side view, and sloping from the back view. Shotty's mad multifaceted, to be honest. I used these 2 clay logs to map out where the 2 spines will go because, as I said, I had to make sure that they looked fairly parallel from all sides. I also added this fat piece of clay to the side so that I would have more fluff to work with in terms of sloping the sides while also keeping the entire shape round. Then I cut off the excess flattened clay that was created from the sloping. Then, selector, run it back! I cut off the excess again. I gave the end a cunty little diva point. Then, DJ remix the ting! I had to make new logs because I actually do need to incorporate them. They weren't just for decoration, silly. So yes, I did begin the incorporation process with my spatula tool. As you can see, I highly recommend putting on more clay than you need, even if you're making something thin, because you can always scrape and smoosh the excess clay, but adding more clay when you don't have enough is not only too much work, but will also look mad sloppy. Madam Skiff really commits to the triangular side view gag with these pointy bits in the middle of their frame, so I pinched these on for her. Maybe I should do a bugs that look like leaves series, but I think it's just because I really want to make a leaf insect specifically, especially their round little heads. Oh, they're so cute. Anyways, after studying a few different reference photos, including some that Jack specifically sent me, I plotted out the little indents in the sides of Miss Skiff Bun a Spliff, which I highly recommend doing with any bug that has a lot of moving parts, or else it'll end up looking like a school project poster board headline where you start off with huge letters and then get skinnier because you've run out of space. I use my ball tool to add in those pushed in parts, by the way. Next up, I'm rolling out a skinny mini log and divvying that up into teensy weensy little dots of clay that run along the sides in between some of the indents. Also, I forgot to show this, but when I made the indents, I was also referencing the top view to make sure the indents lined up with each other to ensure everything was good and symmetrical. Next up, I'm mapping out the top parts, which isn't even a true indent that Miss Skiff has. I just used my ball tool to make sure I wouldn't have hell to go through when it came time for me to paint. Like when I don't make lines in the clay for a moth or butterfly to represent the lines that it has on the wings. So when it comes time to paint those, I feel like I'm going to pass away trying to make them symmetrical. I know now what you're thinking is, Sydney, you literally carve the veins to the wings when it's still in a soft clay form. We literally watch you do that, so all the theatrics you're having right now are so unnecessary. To which I would say, it didn't go all the way through. I didn't make the indents deep enough, so once I went over the whole thing with green paint, I had no clue where to trace, and I was so scared, so I put it off for a whole business day. If I do it like this in the clay form, then when it comes time to paint, I can just trace the lines and still have a very strong will to live. With that baked, we are officially done with all three and can begin the painting process. I have something special in store for Madam Skiff, so I put on a base coat and then I set her aside. I jumped right in next with the best time to wear a saddleback sweater is all the time. Because I always planned on using the same lime green for those two, but first I had to put down a base layer of dark chocolate colored paint for her because that's a black queen right there, right? And I had to demolish a few of my brushes to ensure that I got the base paint in every nook and cranny. There are multiple points when painting the two spiky cats in this video that I intentionally make certain elements slightly asymmetrical because most Caterpillar design elements are asymmetrical, or as I like to call it, deceptively symmetrical, with one of those elements being the circle in the middle. After I finished painting on the sweater, I switched to painting the mustache using a combination of layering colors and dry brushing in my best attempt to achieve the soft velvety look. I said best attempt, okay? Keep that in mind. It was while I was painting this I decided to fix a minute detail on the stinging rose, but I ended up breaking it! It's fine though, because I have a mango tree in my backyard. Haha, viewers mad. So I ate that and then I fixed it again in the background. And no, I did not charge the Caterpillar Lab extra for the time it took to fix a mistake. That was all mine. After I apply this perfectly muddy highlighter color that acts like the false eye spots you would see on an orca, I'm going to razzle your dazzle with a little trick. Instead of killing yourself to make an impossibly thin line, here's my lazy way. First, paint down a relatively skinty outline with the outer edge perfectly crisp. Then go over it with your other color, which in my case was white, getting as close to the outer edge as possible. I did that all around, not just in the circle in the middle, and skibbeed on a beat, shabang. Next up is the hard part. Womp womp, I'm suffering from success. Now I have to paint every single stinger twice because I have to paint them all pinky coral and then give them reverse frosted tips with a very dark brown. I know they have stingers, but it's okay. Go ahead and pick one up with your bare hands. You'll only be hospitalized for a little bit, and you're built different. You got that. Anywho, last but not least, it's the baby, and I have a sponsor. Wow! They really rock with me. They really rock with me. Yes, Arrtx has sent me their collection of 60 acrylic markers to use for my next bug. I'm so grateful they reached out to me, and even though I was a bit skeptical on whether they're compatible with clay, man, can I tell you, they are for sure compatible with clay. I didn't have to worry about clogging or pooling, and most importantly, all of the colors are so vibrant, even the light colors. I thought that minty green was too light for our Madam Skiff, so I wrote out the numbers of each marker on the dried base paint in my palette to see which one I liked best, and as you can see, 534 was my winner. I thought she needed a little bit of depth, so I made the base paint again, but ever so slightly darker. Then I went in with my markers for the details, took a picture, flipped it, and drew the reverse image on her other side. Bringing back that minty green for that little bit of pop, I drew on those details and got back to work bringing in those leafy elements on her top half. As I mentioned before, the most impressive thing to me about these markers is how even the light colors are just so opaque. Even when I drew this beige color directly on top of the brown, it was so pigmented that I only needed to put a second layer of beige in a few places. I was then able to jump around using my markers to add in little details, and then I was done. Lastly is the Stinging Rose herself, who I started to paint before realizing I never sanded down her bottom half. After that was done with minimal damage to my soft princess hands, I continued laying down the base paint. For the orange base and the yellow stingers, I threw in some fluorescent paints just to give her that toxic don't touch me broke boy look. With the Stinging Rose, some are more red, more orange, or more yellow, but I stuck to the reference photo that Jack sent me and called it a day. Since her stingers are less densely packed than the Saddleback and didn't have frosted tips, it was a bit easier to paint all the stingers on this one in one go, thankfully. To start her design elements, I started to paint it out and I remembered, City, there's a way easier way to do this. So I busted out the acrylic markers. See? Way easier. For the Stinging Rose, I use them in tandem with the paints because another way that I realize I like to use the markers is using them to map out an outline where I want the design elements to go and then filling them with paint. There was some cracking in places, but after going over it a second time with the markers, it was fine. This shade of purple was so rich and perfect for our rose. As I said when creating Miss Skiff, these markers saved me so much time. Having them felt especially lucrative for a heavily line-based bug like this, because I don't have to worry about the line thickness fluctuating or losing control of my paintbrush and having to waste time fixing it. So, between me and you, they're having a limited time 50% off sale from July 13th to 19th, so check the link in my description to place your order today. And with that, we're basically done. I glazed these pretty ladies with my tried and true Sculpey glaze, but for the stingers and spines on those two, I went outside to resin them, ensuring that the wire stingers stay in place forever and ever, amen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to Arrtx for being my first sponsor ever. And if you made it this far but aren't subscribed, then please subscribe so I can reach my goal of 10,000 subs by the end of the year. Okay, bye!